presentation is from Ruth Hallier, and the title of the presentation is Ecoacoustic Arts, Teaching Qualitative Ecoacoustics Through Sonic Arts, Birds, and Environmental Sensitivities.
Thank you, Gianni.
Ciao, Ruth. Okay, you are reading?
Yes.
Okay.
So hello, I'm Dr. Ruth Hallier, and I'm a professor at the University of California, Santa Barbara. And I firstly want to thank Dr. Almo Farina for organizing the Congress. And I also start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land upon which the University of California, Santa Barbara is located, and pay my respects to the Chumash elders, past, present, and future, for they hold the memories, the traditions, and the culture of this area, which has become a place of learning for people from all over the world. So now for something completely different. The title of my talk is Ecoacoustic Arts, Teaching Qualitative Ecoacoustics Through Sonic Arts, Birds, and Environmental Sensitivities. And my talk today focuses specifically on one course for undergraduate students that I created and taught last quarter at the University of California, Santa Barbara. So I am a creative artist and a professor in the music department with a long career in performance, music, history, humanities, communities, heritage, and experimental arts. So qualities, properties, and politics of sound are inherent to my work, to my research, and to my teaching, particularly as I'm located in a music department. So my connection to ecoacoustics takes the core of ecoacoustics, recognizing that sound is a component of and an indicator of ecological processes, and it concerns the ecological investigation and interpretation of environmental sound. So I developed the core into ecoacoustic arts, and of course I draw on the long histories of research and practices of people such as Bernie Krause and Davide Monacci. So the course I created is titled Sonic Arts, Birds and Environmental Sensitivities. And in this talk, I'll divide my presentation into three sections: a brief overview of the course, a discussion of the core ideas, and a sort of conclusion. So a brief overview.
Ruth, I'm sorry, just a moment. I have some message that say your talk, your voice is a bit low. Can you stay closer to the microphone, please?
Is this better?
A bit better.
Okay, it's too quiet?
Yes, I'm sorry for the interruption.
Okay. So it's an upper division for music majors and non-music majors, 2 hours a week of virtual class. And I always require students to combine core activities, scholarly reading and discussion, and practice-based activities and creative practices. So the course was 2 hours a week for 10 weeks, so very short. But I was gratified to see how the students developed their understanding, skills, and practices in this short time. It was also remote, so due to the COVID pandemic, the campus was not open for teaching, and teaching took place through live virtual sessions. Some students were located in the USA and 2 students in different cities in China. So the course combined 4 elements: discussion of case studies and conceptual ideas, analysis of sonic arts, field work or balcony work, yard work, street work, and composition. And for the purposes of this talk, I want to focus on 3, particularly the field work. But just to give you an idea of 1 and 2, the case studies and analysis, I included work such as by David Rothenberg, so Nightingales in Berlin, Searching for the Perfect Sound, which also introduces them to the idea of sonograms, soundscapes, visualizations, and also to Bernie Krause and to Almo Farina. So I've just marked that here on this particular page. They also looked at, and this is another page from Nightingales in Berlin. So again, introducing them to Bernie Krause's work. They also looked at the idea of Davide Monacci's work, Fragments of Evolution, and also Hannah Tulicki's work, Away with the Birds, and Stephen Felt, so the idea of acoustomology, which I won't go into now. And also to get them thinking in across borders, they listened to BBC Radio 4, Tweet of the Day, and other similar documentaries. So turning to fieldwork, of course, this is a common methodology in music studies, particularly as a method of data gathering by going to a place, to a context, spending time there, listening, interviewing, documenting and recording, to later analyse, interpret and communicate findings. And so fieldwork is common in ecoacoustics, the method of going to a place to gather data through recording technologies, to later analyse, interpret and communicating the findings. So for this course, I brought these two similar yet slightly different methods of fieldwork together. And students were required to do fieldwork, or the field could be a balcony, a backyard, a city street, or for those living near UCSB campus, they could of course go to the campus. They were going, even if only to their balcony, to specifically listen, record and document. They were undertaking observation, qualitative and sometimes quantitative. And the observation employed the senses and recording of data via scientific instruments. So the method brought together ecoacoustics, recording with technology, in this case, mostly their iPhones, but I also wanted them to engage in active human listening. So the data and the raw data and research were then used in three interconnecting ways. They were uploaded to a map, they were submitted as ongoing field notes, and then they were developed into the core activity 4, the creative practices. So to discuss some of these ideas, I draw on the idea of attention to sound to enable students to intellectually and rigorously consider issues of sound. And although the concept of bird sounds seems broad, it was specific enough for the purposes of the music department and for this virtual course with dispersed students. They used acoustic information, visualization, spatial patterns of sound. The idea of scientific method as the acquisition of information from a primary source, relying on recording technology and software, can also be, of course, developed into observation involving perception. So they combined these. And I also developed the idea of, so I just put some of these up here, the idea of ecology as oikos, of house. So going to a place to listen, shifting on wherever the student was located at the time, drawing on the idea of ecology as oikos, which for most of the students during the COVID pandemic, and of course most humans, took on new meanings, home. So there's been a tendency to separate between natural, non-natural, and the idea of separate places and spaces, wildernesses, national parks. And I wanted to stress the idea of ecoacoustics and sound in every environment as local to each person. So this became key, whether they were on the campus, whether they were living in a high-rise in Shanghai, living in an apartment in Pasadena, California. They were all undertaking ecoacoustic data gathering of bird sounds in their own living environment. So I also wanted to expand this into the idea of combining human listening and technological listening, so that they could consider acoustic properties and processes and think about ideas of knowledge making and embodied knowledge. And I combined quantitative and qualitative areas, so discussion of values and attributes, and the sonograms were used as quantitative and qualitative. So I want to move on now to the map, because this became a key part of the process. So this, I'm sure you may be familiar with the ArcGIS, the mapping applications, geographic information systems maintained by Environmental Systems Research Institute. And so this idea of recording and sharing spatial information and mapping became crucial to this course. And remember that students didn't even know where other students were doing their fieldwork. So the sharing and communicating was a really extraordinarily powerful tool for generating discussions and exchanges. So I'll just share with you a few of the screens here. And the blue were their original recordings, and the black are actually recordings of sonic artworks that we looked at in the course as possible ideas for their own work. So you can see there is a distribution on the west coast of the US, some on the east coast, and also in China. The west coast, we kept going in and in and in to different specific locations, and also students moved around. And then this is the University of California at Santa Barbara. And then here is one specific one, so you can see kind of what it looked like for the students. So the student on campus making a specific recording, which is here for the students to listen to and for us to discuss in class. I'll skip over that one. And also just briefly to share with you some examples of the creative practices so that you can get a sense of how the students used some of their fieldwork practices and data. So this was one particular piece simply titled Birds in Shanghai that was developed. Another one, Soaring Over Sonograms, and you can see the student kind of sharing some of their ideas here, captivated by Hannah Tulicki's work, and actually did some fascinating recordings. This student, Killer Aesthetics, he lives near Six Flags in California, and so created a piece that drew on his recordings, but also narratives of his processes. And another one here, Sending Sound Waves Back to the Rooftop, this student recording in Pasadena, specifically on his balcony, and creating a projector using some of his own recordings, and then actually projecting back onto the rooftop and discovering that the light where he lived only went off at 3 a.m. So something happening even in that process. So many have noted that it's increasingly necessary to engage scientific data and information through sensory perception and to influence others to become sensitized, aware and knowledgeable as fact and affect, and to be able to generate action in others. And in the journal Physics Today from April, Tony Ferrer discusses the value of such collaborations in the article Mingling Art and Science Opens Minds. So current undergraduate students are of the generation of young people with deep experiences of private listening through personal headphones and earbuds. They're also the very people who are deeply concerned about changing environments. A primary goal of Ecoacoustics is to document and communicate acoustic environments to observe change and to explore the ways that sound can deepen our understanding of the environment. And I do have evidence that this short course on sonic arts, birds and environmental sensitivities was effective in enabling these humans to be more sensitive towards ecological complexity. They increased their ecological understanding through these processes, and they embraced poetic and political possibilities of influencing others and influencing governmental policy. They utilised their own recording and listening technologies to engage with their acoustic surroundings, translating this ecoacoustic data into embodied and emplaced knowledge, into scientific information, and into compositional artistic responses. They critiqued anthropocentrism and decentered the human. They slowed down, they paid attention to their sonic environment. They listened differently, they listened as wonder and speculation, aware of fragility and resilience as ecoacoustic arts. Thank you. Happy to take questions.
Perfect timing. Thank you, Ruth. And there are questions. So I don't see any rising hands to make questions, but there is a comment from Renata Susalima. Are you able to read the chat?
I'm just going to read it, yeah.
Okay, so can you say something about what is saying or writing Renata?
Yeah, yes, it is just this, the idea of the connection between the scientists and consumers of science. And I think this is very, you know, there does seem to be this divide, or the how communication can happen to allow the specifics and some of the broader conclusions to be open to everyone. And I find that even at the university context, this kind of division. So one thing that I did find with this course, because it was attempting to merge and blend, and these students are from many different disciplines, that they were actually very able to then communicate in very broad ways. And I think that they are actually going to take this forward. So I found that very interesting. These are, you know, 19, 20-year-olds who are impassioned and now able to consider different ways of communication that they wouldn't have done before. So for me, that was one of the big kind of takeaways from this, that it is about communicating beyond a specific and interested community into all sorts of broad. And one of those projects, particularly with Jesus, with Killer Aesthetics, I hope to work with him to continue that, so that he does work actually with local communities of children. He did some fantastic work, and he's a statistics student who also plays flute. So.
Okay, thank you. There is a question from David Monacchi.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you, Ruth, for your wonderful presentation. It's just a comment. I didn't see there were no questions, and I think it's very important what you've done with the students, which come from different fields, and to have all them experiencing with sound. I think is very important. When you have a device in your hand, that and you click on record, your ears immediately behave in a different way, and I'm sure you faced that with your students, if they were recording the soundscape for the first time in their life. And I think it's important at an education level to open the ears of our students, being them students of biology, of ecology, or general students, because once we become sensitive with our hearing systems, we discover actually a way that something that we have somehow in our civilization somehow put apart, because as we know, we live we are the only species who's living in our acoustic garbage, let's say. So we have to close our ears in order to survive in our cities. So projects like yours, I think, are very important for let's say, fostering the awareness on the sonic world around us, being that anthropogenic or, of course, natural and biological. So just at the end of this comment, I would like to tell you that if you suggest to your students to use a specific system to record, because sometimes the quality of the recording in hands of when you have an iPhone in your hands is really low, and it doesn't get you into the reproduction of an habitat. So I would like to suggest for this kind of projects to use a very simple technique, which is called binaural. And there are very cheap binaural sets right now that can be very, very helpful for this kind of interdisciplinary work. Thank you.
Okay, grazie. Thank Paola. Thank David. And there is a question from Tim Mullett.
Hi, Ruth. Very good presentation. I love this idea. So I work for the U.S. National Park Service, and we get visitors from all over the world. And we're trying to, like, our park specifically is trying to figure out ways to connect to a wide diversity of individuals who are educated to non-educated and a lot of cultural backgrounds. And I was wondering maybe to delve into your psyche a little bit. Do you believe there is some common ground that maybe every human being can connect with in terms of their acoustic environment?
Absolutely. And I think this is the key to this. And I take David's ideas about, you know, recording technology, but actually one of the keys to this course was that it wasn't about that reproduction. It was about a sensory environment. And in fact, although they were recording some of the time, they were doing lots of other things. So they were using drawings, they were using language, they were using choreography. So I do think, and what was fascinating was that they all responded so enthusiastically, and they all said, but I haven't listened in this way before. And this is in the music department, you know. So for me, that was the key to this, because this, in the music department, of course, listening is core. That's what we do, we listen. Well, we make music, but we listen. And so to actually have these students suddenly go, I am listening differently. I had not listened to that bird. I had not listened in that way. Wherever they were, and also to go back onto campus, those that were still there, and say, gosh, you know, my goodness. So that sense of opening up, and I think that that of course that's possible for anybody, and I would love to work with you, Tim. I think it would be a great project, and I have to say that this was, I mean, it's something I've done a lot, but not in this way. And so the kind of success of it and the simplicity of it, and that's the other key thing here, that it's because we're so used to having technology, we therefore don't necessarily listen in the same way. So this opened it up to other possibilities. So that's what I'm kind of excited about. It's low tech,
yeah.
actually.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Yeah, contact me, Ruth. I would love to talk to you more.
Yes, let's do it.
Almo, do you have something to add to this discussion?
I don't know if it's too late, but just a consideration about the role of the sound for people. Sound helps to connect people with nature and to maintain the heritage of knowledge. And if you close your eyes and you remember better an image or a sound, depends. But probably if I mute myself, you can see my image, but you have not, my soul is linked to sound. My vision is linked with sound and create a unique effect. So I think that in order to train a young generation to explore nature, the sound is one of the beautiful way to do. Because a sound cannot be stored in the, is complicated to store here like images. It should be stored in your mind. And so you have to train people to store by yourself in your mind.
And body, vibrations. And I think that's the thing. We store it in our body. You know, we hold these memories as vibrations in our body. So
in the skin, you are collecting sound in your skin.
Yes.
Yeah. Good.
Okay, nice consideration. Now